Living by your intuition is very different from living from your mind. And I know learning to trust our intuition is a journey we all need to embark on at some point, unless you want to stay living in the mind and the illusion. But learning to really know the language of your soul, which to me is intuition, or I would also say that the heart is the mouthpiece of our soul, of the divine. And it's really, it's a task. It's to learn that language, but it's not difficult in a way. It's super, super simple when you know what to tune into. And I know that most of us did not trust our intuition most of our lives. And there is a very good reason for that. And of course, that is that we were told that we should do as our parents said. At least that was definitely one of my big ones, like, do as I say. And I was completely not listened to when I knew that maybe something else was going on, or what they said was not true. But like everybody else in this world, I learned to suppress it. And then that turns into doubting myself, and then going for outside authorities to tell me what to do and what is true. And it's super sad when you really look at it, because here we come in as these beautiful divine sparks, and the spark inside is our guiding system. It's built in. It's not something you need to acquire, but it's something that we need to learn to tune back into. And so here we are, and we know things and we feel things, and it's all amazing and magical. And then we get this boom, 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 and it gets all shut down and suppressed and cut off, truncated, call it whatever you want. It's just like something is blocking us from tuning into that. And then we suffer, right? And we live a life that's completely not what we want. It's we're unhappy, we're unfulfilled. We might be successful in the world, but inside we feel totally unfulfilled, because the only fulfillment that we will feel satisfied with is our own being, our own soul. And that beingness has its own language, how it steers us in the right direction. So it is super simple, but it takes time to implement it. And let me just say the three things that I have lived by as my intuition and guiding system, and learning the language of it, and maybe a vocabulary that grows over time. That is, you need to know the feeling of a yes and the feeling of a no. That is the very, very foundation of intuition as I know it. And then there is also a third part, which is I don't know. And I always say I don't know yet, because at some point we always know. There's just a time where we simply don't know yet. We live in a question mark. And I know I've talked about that before. That can be very difficult and challenging for many people. Also, again, because our society almost demands or requires of us to know. When you're asked a question, you have to know the answer. And what if you just say, I don't know the answer yet, but give me a minute, a moment, a day, whatever, and I'll get back to you and let you know if clarity has arisen or not. So back to the basics of yes and no, and then the I don't know. If you think about something that you really want, something you really like, Just do it right now. Think of something that you actually feel like, yes, I want that. Yes. And then go back to your body and feel what that feels like. When you get this feeling of yes, and I take it down to the very basics, do you want to have a vanilla or a chocolate ice cream? And which one is the yes? And maybe there's no yes. That's totally fine. If you don't eat ice cream, you can do maybe a coconut ice cream or something. If whatever it is, whatever coffee or tea or a rose or a tulip, there is something in you that goes more towards one than the other. That is the way the body speaks to us through this feeling of yes, which comes as an expansion, a sense of warmth, joy, inspiration, aliveness. Yeah, aliveness is a big one. So there is a feeling in the body, an energetic feeling shift that happens when you see something that you want. Learning to feel that feeling and really get to know it is super important, because once you do, you won't doubt it anymore. You may not always be able to express it, because in this world there is still this idea that we can't just be ourselves, that we have to conform, and conforming may not necessarily be matching your yes. So there is that part, which might maybe be another talk I do. But for now, let's just really get to know that feeling of yes and how it shows up in your life. You may feel it differently than I do. And that's why we need to get to know our own language, our own soul language. So that's something you can play with a little bit. And then the other one is no. So now think about something you don't want. Anything that shows up in your life right this moment, when you think of something where like, no, I don't want that. Very important to pause here and then get to know, what does this no feel like? How is that showing up in your body? Usually it comes as maybe a pulling away or putting up a strong wall, like contraction, or wanting to run. Again, it can come in many ways: a tightening in the belly, your jaws clenching. There is definitely a contraction of energy away from what you don't want. This is your body speaking. This is your being, your soul telling you something. And the question is, are you listening to that? Are you taking time to get to know that? And that's what I want to invite you to do, that when you think of something right now that you don't want, now bring your attention back to your body and feel what a no feels like. Where in your body do you feel any kind of something? No. How do you know that this is a no? How is your body communicating that to you? So take a moment and just scan your body and notice this no, how it speaks to you, to your body. And that's also something I want to invite you to play with more, so you really get to know that language. It is like learning a new language that you already know, but yet you turn away from because society said, no, we don't speak that language here. We speak this language, and you have to listen to authorities and trust others and trust the science and, all these things that may be fine and well. But what about this part of you that knows something different? Very important. If you want to start flowing in your own flow, living by your own intuition, by your own divine inner guidance, you need to learn that language, not just learn it, but you really need to, learn to trust it. And then eventually, it's so obvious that you can't, when you look back, you go like, how did I miss that? Because you're learning to trust something you already know. But again, nobody supported you in going with what you know, and instead they wanted you to go with what they wanted you to go with. That's the practice. Then, of course, the courage starts coming in at some point when you need to put it into action. And that can mean that others are not going to agree with you or won't like you. And that's another scary part, that's another phase to move through. So I always suggest people to do it with somebody where you feel safe. It's so wonderful. If you have somebody, a good friend, a partner, somebody you really trust, a teacher, a coach, a therapist, anybody where you really feel safe with, then practice it. If they say, hey, do you want to come? And you feel a no, instead of saying yes to please them and out of fear that they won't like you and all that stuff that we all have done, you go, give me a moment. I always talk about the pause, just live in a pause, live in the middle of a pause. So you always have space to check and not just go by automatic or by what you think others want you to say. You just say, oh, give me a moment. So you just go inside and you just feel, whatever the language is for you. Is it a contraction? Is it an expansion? And then you just say, I think I'm going to stay home tonight or something. I just can't feel it right now. And if they're safe to be with, and if they love you and want you to do what you want to do, they'll say, great, thanks for letting me know. I don't want you to go if you don't want to go. And then you start getting more confident in it. And then at some point, it might be something who gets upset when you say no. And you go like, yeah, I'm sorry, but I can't go against my own grain anymore. I've lived most of my life that way, made me very unhappy, and maybe we can do something tomorrow instead. Something like that. But you learn to get much more comfortable with your own language. It gets fine-tuned, it gets so clear and so clean that you really can't move away from it anymore because you're in your direct inner flow of your yes and your no. So that takes practice. I highly encourage it because it's definitely been a life changer for me over the years. And it's so simple. It's so simple and so much easier. And most people can appreciate it. And when you feel okay with saying no to people, when you feel okay inside saying no, you don't need to say it in a harsh way. And the softer and more easy we are with saying no to somebody, they won't feel offended. It's just when we come out with, we still have a barrier inside of ourselves where we don't totally feel okay saying no. We run up against this barrier and then it comes through much harder. And that's many times where people react. And then we go like, oh my God, it's not okay to say no. And then we go back into the old pattern. So practice with somebody where it feels safe, get comfortable with saying no, which is really saying yes to yourself, and try it out. And then there's that other little piece that I mentioned when you don't know. It's totally normal. It's totally normal. There is knowing and then there is not knowing. and they just flow, ebb and flow. They just have their own life. So if you're in a place where you don't know, sit in the pause, realize that you don't know, and just own that. Just say, I just don't know yet. I need more time. What's the big deal? Right? Once you feel okay with not knowing, once you feel okay saying yes to yourself, once you feel okay saying no to what you don't want, life gets a lot easier. And there will be people who will challenge you. Let them. It's, you still have your yes and your no and your I don't know. And that has nothing to do with anybody outside of yourself. That is your direct inner guidance from your divine, from your soul. That is your intuition guiding you where you want to go. And you can't be wrong in that. We may sometimes wonder what it is and maybe act a little too soon or whatever, but this is always crystal clear. And that's why it's a blessing to learn that language.